What's up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Why do I always boop, boop? What's that? I just feel like you need to see my hands. So hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Wicked Wednesday, where we do a spooktacular video. So I've had way too much caffeine, as you can probably tell already, and we're doing another haunted dolls video. I don't know when this is going up. I just filmed the last one. Like, I turned the camera off and then I turned it back on after I had a glass of water. So here we are doing part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, you don't have to watch them in order, but I will put a card at the end of the video, so stick around to that so you can see that first one as well. There was 2 really good ones. One was really short, but yeah. So go ahead and subscribe, like this video, give it a comment down below. If you don't know what to comment, just put whatever you want. Put a skull emoji. Is there a doll? I don't think there's a doll. Put a skull emoji down below, because you know it's a spooktacular Wednesday, or whatever day you're watching this. I should get into the video. But yeah, subscribing really does help me. I genuinely appreciate it. Your interaction helps get my video seen, and if you guys know anything about creepy videos, YouTube has a tendency to hide them. Anytime there's anything about like spooky, unless it's around Halloween, then they like promote them. But spooky videos tend to get like suppressed and hidden, so you don't get a lot of traction on those, which is really unfortunate because the spooky side of YouTube is really cool. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And oh my god, so this is like my first day of ever learning how to screen record, and I'm realizing that the last video I didn't record at all, so I'm gonna have to go back and record it while watching the video to make sure I have everything accurately. Let's make sure I do it correctly this time, so we're actually gonna get started right now. Alright, so the first one we have, it says danger. So this is from Strange Occurrences. It says it's from Amsterdam. Let's take a look at the photos first, and the doll looks like, just like the last one. I'm not going to diss these people or say that they're just making up a fake story, but I will give my opinions. The doll does look weird. It looks like somebody took an innocent looking doll and made it look, I don't know what the word would be, like some weird, their idea of a witch doctor or exotic of some sort that they're trying to portray. But it's kind of, I don't know. I wonder what it looked like prior to the drawing on it, because that looks like Sharpie that was drawn on it. Alright, so we're going to go to the actual... These dolls are kind of expensive too. Like, I don't... But, alright, let's go. So, the priestess was a well-known woman of great faith. She served her village with great dedication and love, and everyone trusted and loved the woman dearly. One day, a terrible disease hit the village of the priestess. One by one, the villagers came down with the highest fever and were soon covered with boils and wounds that seemed beyond healing. Within a week, many of them died, including the greatest hunters among them. It did not take long for the villagers to fall in dire need of help. The priestess, unstruck by this plague and willing to serve the people, volunteered to travel to the next village and ask for aid. The villagers placed their full trust in the priestess and set her off with the last rations of food they could miss. The priestess walked fast, and soon the agonizing cries of the sick villagers were left behind her. The next town was a day walk away, but as the priestess had walked over so quickly, she arrived sooner. The townspeople welcomed her, and hearing her plea, they hurried to give her what she needed, and by the next morning, much faster than she had anticipated, the priestess was back on her merry way to help the ones that had put their trust in her. As the priestess walked, a small cloud of doubt seeped into her heart. What if she would become sick? What if, by handing out medicine and food, one of the infected would touch her, and soon the boils would be all over her body as well? Who would take care of her? After all, she did not have any family. She had given her life to God, to the villagers. Every day of her waking life, she had been preaching the good word, and helping people out whenever and wherever she could. Sure, the villagers were grateful, but did they truly care for her or had they simply been so fond of her because of her usefulness? And if she turned out not to be useful any longer, would they still be there for her? As the priestess neared her village, she noticed the crying and wails of pain had become much more and much louder. For a second, she wanted to break out into a run and quickly aid those in need, but she hesitated, and her hesitation of minutes turned into hours. She just stood there, listening to the cries of the helpless, the sick, and the dying. She stood there and listened as the cries first grew even louder and more and farther, but eventually died away completely. She stood, and by the time 3 days had passed, not a single sound had come from the village. It was then that the priestess moved again and stepped onto the village square. I am back, she said softly. There was no response. The streets were empty, no boil-covered bodies, no feverish looks, no children crying over their mother's deceased body. No one. The priestess sat down and broke out into tears. I have failed you, she whispered. I have failed you all. But deep down, the priestess did not feel remorse. She felt relief. She felt happy she had survived a disease so gruesome it had apparently taken everyone into an early death, but not her. She was still there. Perhaps her good deeds had paid off after all. After crying some more tears of relief, the priestess suddenly felt a soft tap on her shoulder. She turned around and gasped. In front of her stood countless people. They were all covered in boils, and their eyes had feverish looks. Some of them looked as if they had been lying in their graves for weeks. You betrayed us, one of them said. You said you would go out and seek help, but you never came back, added another. And look at us now, one from the left said. Now we were all dead, one of them spoke back. All thanks to you. They stared at her with their cold, dead eyes. But I, muttered the princess, I was so scared. The ghosts of the town people looked at her. So were we, one answered. But now we know there is nothing to be afraid of. Come, we'll show you. The village people, or what was left of them, stepped forward one by one. The first dropped black pitch of oil on her hands. Since you used these hands to aid us when we did not need you, but left us to die when we were in dire need, so they explained. Then the next group came forward and slashed out her eyes, leaving her with a cold, blank stare. Just like us, they added, staring into nothingness and nothing we could do about it. The last group came forward and reached through her chest to squeeze her heart so firmly it stopped beating. Now you may see, death is not the end, they said softly as they stepped back again. And soon the priestess left the mortal realm and became one of the villagers once again, destined to haunt the grounds for eternity. And then it goes into like this whole preaching thing that they talk about. But that's what they're saying their story is. They don't say how they figured out that story or how they got there, but I mean, that black on the hands is probably signifying the oil, the eyes are signifying the cutting it out, and then I don't know what the hearts on the cheeks are, but man, that is a creepy story. That was more than I was expecting. But I do want to know like what the priestess is doing now and to cause it to be haunted. You know? Okay, on to the next one. All right, so the next one is going to be Nica Haunted Doll, Victorian Paris wealthy socialite, and this one's in Payson, Arizona. She's actually very pretty. Definitely Victorian looking. Come on, load. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's a pretty traditional porcelain Victorian doll. Let's see what the story is. This one was sold as well. Let's see any. Okay, it doesn't show. Okay, so let's look at item details. Okay, so Nica is short for Veronica, which she feels is too prudish a name for girls like me. She came to us from Paris a long time ago. Lisa likes to bring her out when we have company because she seems to have this ability to let people's inhibitions down. We have to be careful to watch her energy because sometimes this works too well. Nica was a very bad girl in her short life. She was considered a vixen, and all the women in town feared that she would seduce their husbands. The men were hoping for it. She had been left a fortune by her wealthy parents, and she had absolutely no qualms about sexuality, which was terribly unheard of in Victorian times. She had the money to cover any bribes needed to be left alone by the constable. She would hold parties that were by and large and closest thing to an orgy that Paris had seen. She began a trend in the arts circles for cocaine and opium-fueled sex parties. She was one of the first single women who had no shame about it. Nica needs to be with somebody who can match her intense desires. She prefers to show herself in dreams and visions, but can also stay on the Ouija board for hours at a time. She is a fetish queen and seems to know more about the kinky side of life than I have ever learned. Nica claims to be the model for many a famous French artist's nude paintings, and we don't doubt that a bit. Nica died at 29, most likely from complications of chlamydia or syphilis. She loves to have an audience, and we think she would do best in a house that takes many risks and has lots of people over all the time. So that last sentence, all I can think of, a house that takes many risks. So a house that has lots of sex or lots of orgies or swinger parties, who knows? But let's go back to the photos again and do one last look. That took a turn that I wasn't expecting. I don't read these prior to showing them to you guys, but wow, that one's interesting. These eyes look much bluer than in this photo, but maybe it's just the editing on it. But that one's okay. Alrighty then. So let's do one more. So this is a disturbing haunted doll, handmade, shrunken, dried apple head. So that's why the face looks like that. My internet is going so slow today. Come on, what's happening? There we go. So look at those hands. They're kind of creepy looking. They look like feet attached. And it definitely looks like an old lady. And I think that stain on the dress is probably the juices from the apple, like as it dried. But it's definitely creepy looking. I will say that. And it says made in the 1930s, and it's cotton made. Let's see. Item details. Handmade, shrunken, dried apple head voodoo doll from Louisiana in the 1930s. Okay. The colorful flower print dress and the spotless apron on this doll caught my eye, but her face really gave me a jolt. It's a macabre and downright disturbing. It reminded me a little of a deplorable Brazilian shrunken head souvenir I saw when I lived in South America. I hate to say it, but the doll gives me a bad vibe and I can't shake. This doll has a shrunken head, so to speak, except that it has been made from a carved apple that has been dried over time. The eyes are glass, but one is hard to see. The lips are outlined in red. Her dress, apron, and petticoat have been expertly made by hand. There is a stain on her left shoulder. My mother told me these apple head dolls were common in the 1930s. I was told by the previous owner that this is an active doll who prompts an immediate sense of uneasiness as well as unexplained events and mischief. The doll's exact origin is unknown, but it is believed she was made in Louisiana. Please feel free to send me messages with your questions. Okay, so that one was pretty fast, but again, that stain, I will say I do think that that's just from the apple. I mean, even if it dries out, if it gets wet again, I don't doubt that it would somehow get back onto the doll. And if it was from the 1930s, I don't think the stain is anything devious, but yeah. Alright guys, so that are all the dolls I'm going to be doing today. If you guys like this kind of video, or if you have other items you want me to look up and read to you guys or discuss with you guys, please let me know. And of course, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think about the stories, and as always, keep it classy because there's no need to be rude. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day, night, whatever it is, wherever you are. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and spooky. Bye!